If you want to learn about westward expansion, know that I made this video to give you an introduction and an overview. My purpose is to cover key points you should know about westward expansion for the GED Social Studies test or maybe for another social studies class. Let's get started. Today, the United States of America has 50 states, but it wasn't always this way. Long before the US had 50 states, there were 13 original colonies. The time period we're talking about was the 1600s and 1700s. Now, we can group these 13 original colonies into New England colonies, middle colonies, and southern colonies. So what happened in between the 13 original colonies and the 50 states the US has today? Well, a lot happened. But in this video, we're just going to focus on westward expansion, the expansion of American settlers into the West. Manifest destiny was a guiding philosophy of westward expansion. Manifest destiny was basically the belief that it was American settlers' destiny to settle and conquer the North American continent and prosper. So let's start off by talking about the Louisiana Purchase. So the year was 1803 and the president was Thomas Jefferson. Now, who was Thomas Jefferson? Well, Thomas Jefferson was the third U.S. president who served as president from March 4th, 1801 to March 4th, 1809. Now, Thomas Jefferson was the primary writer of the Declaration of Independence, and some say he also loved French fries. Anyway, Thomas Jefferson made a deal between the U.S. and France, and the U.S. gained about 827,000 square miles of land for $15 million. So after Thomas Jefferson made the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, he commissioned the Corps of Discovery led by Lewis and co-led by Clark to explore the new territory and see if they could find a route to the Pacific Ocean. So on the left here we see Meriwether Lewis, and on the right we see William Clark. Now, I never knew that William Clark had red hair until I saw this picture and I googled it, and it turns out that he did. But anyway, when Lewis left on his journey, he left from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Now, when Lewis arrived in Pittsburgh, his boat wasn't ready, so he had to wait about 6 weeks in Pittsburgh before he could leave. So what did Lewis do during that time? Did he go ride the incline, grab a sandwich from Permane Brothers, and catch a Steelers game? Well, remember, this was actually 1803, and none of these things existed yet. But the one thing that he really did was adopt a dog for the journey. So I often feature my cat Tommy in my YouTube videos, but today we're actually going to be featuring a dog, and this isn't just any dog, but Lewis and Clark's dog. Now, this is a statue in St. Charles, Missouri of Lewis and Clark with their dog named Seaman. In August of 1803, Lewis's boat was finally ready, and he set off with his crew. And Pittsburgh is known for having 3 rivers. The Monongahela and the Allegheny joined to form the Ohio River. And when Lewis left from Pittsburgh, he left on the Ohio River. Any discussion about Lewis and Clark would be incomplete if we didn't talk about Sacagawea. Sacagawea was a Native American who accompanied Lewis and Clark between 1804 and 1806, and she proved invaluable to their journey in many ways. She acted as an interpreter, she provided direction, and she shared valuable knowledge of natural foods and medicines. She understood which plants, roots, and berries were food and which ones were medicine, and she's said to have remained calm and cheerful during adversity. Now, this is a statue of Sacagawea in Washington Park in Portland, and as you can see, she's holding a baby. Sacagawea gave birth to her first son during the journey and carried him on her back. Now, Sacagawea's husband, Charbonneau, was also on the journey. Lewis and Clark initially hired him as a guide and interpreter. Now, the details of this story differ slightly depending on which source you read, but the basic story goes like this. Charbonneau was steering a boat when a strong wind hit the boat. The boat tipped over and filled with water. Charbonneau panicked. Critical supplies fell into the water, but Sacagawea remained calm and she rescued the valuable supplies that they needed for the journey. Now, there are stories out there about some other blunders that Charbonneau made along the journey, and Lewis is known to have taken a few shots at him. Lewis once said that Charbonneau was a man of no particular merit, and he also said that Charbonneau might be the most timid waterman in the world. Anyway, in 1805, the expedition made it to the Pacific Ocean, and there's so much more that we could talk about when it comes to Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea, but we're going to switch gears now. Let's next talk about the War of 1812. Now, the War of 1812 was fought from 1812 through 1815, and it was primarily between the U.S. and Great Britain. Now, one of the causes of the War of 1812 was impressment. The British had the best navy at the time, and the British employed a policy of impressment. Basically, they would stop American ships on the sea and force Americans to fight for the British Navy. Have you ever known two people who were fighting and maybe you didn't want to take a side and you wanted to stay neutral, but maybe if things got really heated, one person tried to get you to stop interacting with the other person? Well, Great Britain and France were enemies during this time and they were fighting, and while the US tried to stay neutral, Great Britain imposed trade restrictions on the US. Now, please note that there's a lot more we could say about trade restrictions leading up to the War of 1812, but in this video here I just wanted to introduce the point. And I want to now talk about the British alliances. So as the US expanded westward, conflict resulted between Americans and the Native American tribes. And to help protect their territories, Native American tribes sought alliances with Great Britain. So why would Great Britain want to form these alliances? Well, Great Britain wanted to protect British interests and wanted to restrict the US from expanding westward. Now, eventually the conflict between the US and Great Britain ended in a draw, and the British basically abandoned their Native American allies. Now, losing financial and military support from Great Britain made the Native American tribes less triumphant in their defense efforts, and sadly, many Native Americans were killed and millions were forced out of their territories during westward expansion. So let's fast forward now to the mid-1800s and talk about the Oregon Trail next. So what was the Oregon Trail? The Oregon Trail was a trail approximately 2,000 miles long that ran from Independence, Missouri to Oregon City, Oregon. Hundreds of thousands of American pioneers traveled on the Oregon Trail to venture west. A typical journey lasted 5 to 6 months. Now, the Oregon Trail presented many different dangers, and sadly 1 in 10 travelers died. Now, if you ever played the Oregon Trail game, you might remember at some point seeing the game over screen that said, "You have died of dysentery." Well, diseases like dysentery, smallpox, and cholera led to many deaths for those traveling on the Oregon Trail. Other causes of death included drowning during river crossings and accidents such as being crushed beneath wagon wheels, among other things. Now, back in the 1800s, they didn't have cell phones, but they did have the Pony Express. And the Pony Express was a mail service that used a trail between Missouri and California. It was put together by William Russell, Alexander Majors, and William Waddell in 1860 with the goal of delivering express mail within 10 days or less. So how did they transport the mail that fast? Well, there were about 190 Pony Express stations that were spaced about 10 to 15 miles apart along the Pony Express route. Now, a rider would change to a fresh horse at each station, and every 75 to 100 miles, each rider would hand off the mail to a new, fresh rider. However, the Pony Express didn't last long. It wasn't profitable, and also, the first transcontinental telegraph system was finished in 1861. Today, part of US Route 36 is called the Pony Express Highway because it includes the starting portion of the Pony Express. Now, legend has it that William Cody, better known as Buffalo Bill, rode for the Pony Express. Buffalo Bill was born in 1846. Now, the story goes that Buffalo Bill got his nickname because he was a highly skilled buffalo hunter. He worked for the Kansas Pacific Railroad Company hunting buffaloes to help feed the workers. And the story goes that there was another guy named William Comstock who was also good at hunting buffaloes. And the two had a buffalo hunting contest to see who would win the right to the nickname Buffalo Bill. So Buffalo Bill Cody won, and he also won the right to be the one and only Buffalo Bill. Another interesting fact about Buffalo Bill is that he served in the military and won the Medal of Honor. Now, there were stories written about Buffalo Bill, and he went on to perform in shows about the West that were extremely popular. The Buffalo Bills football team's name comes from Buffalo Bill Cody. Do you know how the San Francisco 49ers got their name? Well, their name comes from the California Gold Rush. Word spread that there was gold in California, so people began traveling to search for gold. It's estimated that by 1855, approximately 300,000 people made the journey to California. Many even left their families and homes to search for gold. This discussion would not be complete if we didn't touch on the Industrial Revolution. So what was the Industrial Revolution? Well, the Industrial Revolution was a time period of much significant and technological innovation in the 1700s and 1800s. and there was a shift away from production of goods by hand to machines, and industrialization led to significant changes in patterns of work, in family life, and in human settlement. There were many significant inventions during this time. Some key inventions include the typewriter, the motorcycle, the steam engine, the sewing machine, and the steel plow invented by John Deere. And if you're wondering, yes, the company that makes tractors is named after this John Deere. Now, there are many different innovations that we could add to our list here, but one noteworthy development I want to mention is the Transcontinental Railroad. Now, in 1869, the first Transcontinental Railroad was finished. Eventually, 4 more transcontinental railroads linked the East with the Pacific coast. Which do you think would be easier? Riding all the way out west in a wagon, or just hopping on a train? Well, railroads made travel much faster and allowed for more rapid travel for people and faster transport of goods. I hope this presentation was helpful to give you a starting point and overview as you study westward expansion. Thank you for watching.